What is up, YouTube? And today I'm just going to be talking about what characters you guys should be rerolling for if you're starting anytime in the future if you're watching this video, or if you just started maybe a couple days ago and you're thinking about rerolling, because rerolling in this game does give you a very large advantage. And the reason why I'm making this video is because there is a uptick in the amount of new players we're getting, obviously because we have the global launch coming, and there's a lot of ads still going on talking about that global launch in even like every single region. And I just wanted to make this video for the new players out there. If you guys are veterans of the game and you guys have a solid understanding of who to reroll for, feel free to put your opinions down below in the comment section to help those newer players out, because having newer players in the game is always great for the health of the game. But basically, this reroll tier list is going to be in relation to the LD selector that we get. So if you're coming from Epic 7 or from Summoner's War, you have those Moonlights, those LD 5 stars. In this game, you get to start with pretty much whatever LD or Moonlight 5 star SSR that you want. And they're doing that by giving us this extra Affinity Animus Selection ticket on day 2 of the check-in. So I think it's on September 26th you'll be able to get it. So we're just going to be talking about which one you're going to go for. There's one character that's not available, that is Yelly from the selector. But just keep in mind, if you guys are looking to see what you should get from the selector, I have a separate video on that, which I'll link down below. But pretty simply, this is going to be for what characters you guys are going to want to actually reroll for. Because the best character from the selector is down here. It is going to be Lily. Now, just a side note though, so if you're rerolling and you end up getting Lily, you pretty much just want to just keep that account right away, because you can use that selector on someone else. So you can kind of look at this list and kind of see it as like, oh, if I don't get Lily, I should reroll for these characters. If I do end up getting Lily during the reroll, then you can kind of look at the tier list and see what you should get from the selector, if that makes sense, right? But like I said, I have a separate video on that. You can check it out on my channel. It'll be down below as well. But let's actually look at the tier list. So basically, I put all the SSRs that you want to think about rerolling for. There's going to be some other characters I don't have listed here that are pretty decent, but I wouldn't really recommend. A good example of this could be something like a Freya, who's a pretty good support, or something like even like a Romoka, who can help you in like Doki Doki. But from my experience playing the game on 2 accounts and playing through a lot of the PvE content, as you guys know, because I make a ton of guides and stuff like that for PvE content, and I do play PvP on a high level, I think this is going to be the best list in terms of what you want to reroll for. So assuming you take Lily from the selector, I think the 3 best targets to go for, which are all going to be DPSs, with one being a weird DPS, which we'll talk about, is going to be Lilium, Yelly, and Shadow Sonya. Now I think any of these 3 are fine because they're all very good, especially getting into PvE. But I think the 2 best choices when you're rerolling is going to be Lilium and Yelly. So Lilium is going to be the best single target DPS in the game, bar none, and she's used in pretty much every single area of content outside of one of the dungeons, which you will be able to do pretty easily because it got nerfed a lot. And also on top of that, you're going to see that she's amazing in PvP. Very, very high priority in every single playstyle. You know how there's different playstyles in gacha games usually. She fits every single archetype currently, which makes her very strong. So she is the best choice in my opinion. The second best choice, which is not that far behind, especially for PvE content, is Yelly. Yelly does slightly less damage and has more RNG into her kit when you're doing PvE content, but she is going to be the best AoE DPS in the game. In fact, you can use her in that one dungeon Lilium isn't able to be used because it's an AoE dungeon, and because of that, she's going to just be, in my opinion, one of the best PvE characters. However, I will say Lilium does have faster clears, so that's like a plus side, but Yelly does have a more broader range of content you can actually take her into. The only thing is in PvP, you can only really play her if you play like a super fast style. You're not going to be able to use her in like the standard bruiser styles that a lot of people are turning to in the meta. So you have to keep that in mind, but she's still usable in PvP, especially in the early stages. You'll probably use her all the time in PvP, and in PvE, she is god tier, similar to Lilium. The next character we have that I really recommend if you get her is Shadow Sonya. I will say though, if I had to put a tier between these two, between the best reroll target and the A tier, I would put her like in between. And I know some people wouldn't agree with that, but my logic is that Shadow Sonya as a character, she allows you to get into some dungeons earlier, and some. So not every single one, just like 3. And those dungeons, if you can get into them earlier, you will be able to progress your account slightly faster at the start. However, she does fall out of usage in like the farming stages, but she does retain some viability in like the late game stages that you'll actually do. Ember Trek, Anasync Echoes, Ethernet Rally, all are 3 very important areas of content in late game that you have to farm. Not farm, but kind of just like do them when they reset, like a weekly, I think it's like a monthly reset out actually. And you'll be able to progress through that a lot easier and get more rewards. The thing is, later on, you won't use her as much in your farming stages because she's not as fast as Yelly and Lilium once you gear them. But she does lower the barrier to entry, so she's also a very solid choice because she makes farming your DPS gear early on extremely easy. So for that reason, I put her also as a really good reroll target. You have to keep in mind though, she's not used in PvP at all currently. So for that reason, I have her like in between, mostly because of the PvP aspect. You know, if she was good in PvP, I'd probably just like say that honestly she might be one of the best, or not one of the best. She already is one of the best. I'd probably say she is maybe the best out of the 3, but because she's not used in PvP and PvP is a big part of the game, I have to put her, you know, at the bottom of the best reroll target tier. So now we have the A tier targets, the reroll targets. So all of these are pretty good as well. If you get tired of rerolling for the top 3 because they are LD SSRs, so it does take a while to get them, although it shouldn't take too much time honestly because the game throws you so many summons and the rates are very good, you can actually settle for the A tier. So at the top we have 2 other LD SSRs. So we have Messiah and we have Doki Doki. So Messiah for PvE content, he's going to be pretty good. He's not amazing because even though he's element neutral because he's an LD, he doesn't actually do as much damage as these 2, Lilium and Yelly, and he doesn't really cheese stages as Sonya. In fact, he actually makes gear requirements for PvE content for farming higher, so for that reason, I don't really recommend him if you can. But the reason why he's still up here in this A tier at the top is because in PvP, he is a monster for cleaving. If you guys are a big fan of the cleave, play fast, one-shot playstyle, he's the best DPS. So that's why he's up here. Now we have Doki Doki. She's a pretty good support as well. She's pretty similar to Lily in terms of PvP relativity, and honestly in PvE content, she can be almost as good as well. The problem with Doki Doki is she requires a lot of skill up investments, and those are pretty rare in the game in terms of like how often you can get them. So I can't really put her up here, but a fully invested Doki Doki is like definitely in like one of the best characters in the game. But because you can't really invest that much into her, especially in the early game because you have to invest into other characters, I have her still in the A tier, but not up in the best reroll targets. And honestly, for the reroll targets, like the best ones, you want a DPS anyways because you're going to pick Lily anyways, so you might as well pick a DPS because Lily is like a giga buffer to your DPS. Now the next 2, these are going to be RGB DPSs. Blue ones in fact, and they're going to be Giada and Rosa. So the reason why they're so high up is because if you guys kind of get sick and tired of rerolling for the LDs and you get them and you just want to see, like, you know, end it all and just like, not end it all, end the rerolling and then start playing, you can go for these 2 if you have them on one of your reroll accounts because Giada is a very good AoE DPS, not as good as Yelly, but very solid. Honestly, I think she's better for Yelly in like one of the dungeons, which is pretty important, but outside of that, she's not going to be better than Yelly. But still a very solid AoE DPS that you will use for a long time. Rosa is also a pretty solid AoE single target DPS hybrid. I wouldn't say she's nearly as good as like Yelly and Lilium, but she's going to be somewhat relevant to you. Honestly, I think I might have her a little bit too high and should probably put her down. But she's a solid DPS as well. And then after that, we have Fushu. So Fushu is a very good healer support. She's probably the best in the game for PvP right now, and then in PvE, she's going to be one of the top tier ones. So if you actually get her as a support, she's a good option. The only thing I'll say about Fushu is I wouldn't take her unless I have another DPS I already have. So if I only have Fushu, I wouldn't take that account because you're not going to have any good DPS. So if you get like Fushu and Giada, for example, this is a very powerful combo together, and they will be super strong together in a lot of content. So this is something you want to think about. Next, we have 2 LD SSRs again, the last 2 that are available from, you know, the game, and that's Heinrich and Mio. These are mostly PvP characters. You can use them in PvE as well, but it's mostly for very late games, so I don't really recommend them. Very strong in PvP right now, but you're not going to be able to use them for a long time anyways, especially Mio because she requires a lot of skill up investments as well. So if you get them, you want to keep them because they're LDs. It's fine, but just keep in mind that you're not going to get as much value out of them in the early to mid game as you would with characters above them. Next, we have Holden. So Holden is one of the best PvP characters in the game. He's also pretty solid in PvE because you can use him in 2 of the bosses, and actually I think like 3, right? You can use him in Aurora, you can use him in Teramaton, you can use him in Rengokutsu, you can use him in also Sharon, and you can also use him in Nikonana, so 5. So pretty good, but he's never going to really be the best choice for any of those except for one of them. So because of that, he's down here in the A tier, and he also requires a lot of investment. And now the last one I recommend is Klaus. Now Klaus is usually the character you choose out of the targeted banner, so not only will the game give you a selector for an LD SSR, but you also get a targeted banner where you can choose like from a large pool of SSRs and just summon for them and get them basically for free. It's like half the amount of summons required at much higher rates. And Klaus is usually the targeted choice, but if you get her in the reroll, she's a good option as well, because she's like one of the best supports in the game, if not the best for PvE content in terms of debuffs, and she is super strong. You're going to take her into a lot of content, you'll use her in a lot of the bosses, and if you actually pick her or like get her from the reroll, you can just choose a DPS like Giada or Rosa and you'll be good to go. However, I will say though, because the LD SSRs are just so strong and you can choose it from the targeted, I just think going for, you know, a DPS from the reroll makes more sense, especially the LD SSRs. And then if you select her after, and then you also take Lily from the LD selector, your account is going to be God tier. So like the God tier account would be looking like, you know, something like this, for example. You know, you select her, Lily, you targeted summon Klaus, and then you reroll for Lilium, or you can swap out Lilium for Yeli, or you can even do something like this. Even though this one still lacks a DPS, there's a very good SR DPS option, a 4-star option in Diting that you can use that will be very solid as a replacement for Yeli and Lilium as well. Or even something like this, if you don't really want to reroll for the LD SSRs, is fine, or even something like that. So a lot of options you can choose. So yeah, pretty much it for this tier list though, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe to see more content like this, and I'll see you guys next video.